You could say I was fat, dumb, and happy. I'm not actually fat. It's just a figure of speech. But I was stupid because I thought I had a strong marriage. I was wrong. My wife is a lying liar. I'm John T. Miller. My friends call me JT, or the Beer Man. They call me Beer Man because I brew 5 gallons of beer at my house. Most of the guys in my beer club brew in kegs. I do, however, bottle my beer. My wife, Dawn, drinks wine. She hates beer. And no, I don't have a beer belly. I work out 5 days a week in the gym. I have a history of heart problems in my family, so I exercise and watch what I eat and my salt intake. I am 6'3" and weigh 192 lbs. 8 years ago, I left corporate America and started my own company, which is doing very well. Dawn works for a top 50 corporation. She has been working there for 24 years. She started working in the IT department as an analyst a month after our wedding. A little over 5 years ago, she moved to an instructor position in the education department. The company requires her to attend at least 20 days of seminars per year to stay abreast of changing technologies. At 46, Dawn is simply stunning. She is 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighs 118 pounds, and does not look like a woman who has given birth to 2 children. She is a runner and meets 6 other women on our block at 6 every morning to run 6 miles. Our daughter, Emily, is 22 years old. She graduated from Florida State University and is a first-grade teacher in Naples. Like her mother, Emily is a runner. She started running with her mom's group at the age of 14. I'm proud to say that she loves the beer I make. She found a beer club in Naples and joined it. Whenever possible, I visit it with her. Our son, Kent, is a 21-year-old student at the University of Florida. It's very funny to listen to his sister and him attack each other. Kent drinks my beer. He is a good student who is looking forward to joining my business. I told him he had to work in corporate America for at least 5 years before I would hire him. I think he needs real-world experience. Dawn doesn't like beer and can't stand the smell in our house when I brew a batch. I always plan to brew a new batch when Dawn travels. She's in Dallas this week, and I'm making an English brown ale. I thought life couldn't get any better. But little did I know that she was about to change. Bobby, one of my beer club members, called and asked if I would meet him at the airport last Wednesday night at 8:30. Of course I agreed, and it would have cost him 6 packs of his award-winning porter. As I entered the baggage claim area, I saw 3 of Dawn's instructors exit the plane. I wondered why Dawn wasn't with them, so I took out my cell phone to call her work phone. I usually call her on her cell phone. I don't remember the last time I called her at her office. Her message read, "Hello, you've reached Dawn Miller's voicemail. I'll be out of the Dallas office teaching classes until Wednesday, and I'll be on vacation Thursday and Friday. Please leave a message and I will call you back on Monday." About this time, I saw Bobby walking towards me and approached him. I told Bobby what I knew and how confused I was. Bobby suggested that I call Steve, another member of our beer club, to get his opinion. Steve is a detective in our local police department. Before I called Steve, I decided to call Dawn. After she said, "Hello," I replied, "I just wanted to call and hear your voice. I can't wait to hug you." "Well, what caused this? Are you excited?" We both laughed. "Yes, I'm going to make love to you as soon as you get home on Friday. I'm sure I can't wait for Saturday. Darling, you know that these trips exhaust me. My earliest flight is Friday, and I can't wait to sleep in your arms. Dawn, should you stay and pack your things?" "Yes, I have to stay and do my part. It wouldn't be fair to them. I love you, and see you on Friday." This was the first time Dawn lied to me. I knew it was late, but I called Steve anyway. We talked for a few minutes about our next meeting over beer. "Steve, I think Dawn is cheating on me and I need some advice." Steve replied, "I'm very sorry to hear that, and I'll help as much as I can. First, tell me why you think Dawn is cheating on you." Taking a sip of my beer, I said, "Bobby asked me to meet him at the airport, and I saw 3 of Dawn's colleagues with their luggage. They were with Dawn in Dallas this week. Her office voicemail said she was in Dallas until Wednesday and on vacation until Monday. Before I called you, I talked to Dawn, and she acted like she still had classes until Friday. Steve listened to me without interrupting, and then asked, "How often did Dawn go on business trips?" "About twice a quarter." "Did she travel with the same group on every trip?" "No." "Each lesson lasted 5 days?" "Yes." "Did she always leave on Saturday and return on Friday evening?" "As long as I remember. She leaves on Saturday morning and returns on Friday evening." "What does she do when she returns home?" "She's tired when she comes home, takes a long bubble bath and goes to bed. First thing on Saturday morning, she washes her clothes. We go out to dinner and come home to have sex." Steve agreed that something was going on and advised me to call his private investigator friend Frank Jones and discuss it with him. I thanked Steve for his understanding and said I would call Frank in the morning. The next morning, Frank Jones called me. It turned out that Steve called Frank and asked him to call me. I told Frank the same story I told Steve, then answered his questions. Frank paused and then asked, "You've been happily married for over 24 years. Do you really want to know what's going on?" "Yes. Why do you ask?" "In my experience, most such cases end in divorce. You must answer the following questions. How much do you want to know? How far back do you want to search? How much are you willing to spend? Can you handle what we learn?" I wasn't ready for this. I sat silently and then said, "Frank, I want to know everything. When, where, with whom, as far as you can. I will spend whatever it takes to find out the truth. If I've been shitted, I want to know how deep." We decided that Frank would contact a private investigator he knew in Dallas to check on Dawn. He will ask one of his staff to check the training schedule. They will also contact the 3 instructors I saw leaving the airport. In the meantime, I had to search the house for anything unusual. I wasn't sure what to look for or where to start. I excluded the living room, dining room, kitchen, Emily's room, and Kent's room for the time being. I decided to start with Dawn's dresser. Everything I saw in her dresser was something I had seen before. After opening her closet door and seeing a lot of boxes there, I decided to check the bathroom instead. There were no secrets in her bathroom. I went back to her closet and started searching. Starting with the hanging clothes and going through all the shoe boxes, I couldn't find anything unusual or questionable. After searching the master bedroom, guest bedroom, closet, garage, and attic, I still didn't know any more than when I started. Frank arrived around 5 in the evening. He installed cameras in all the bedrooms, living room, and kitchen, as well as a voice recorder for our phone. We drove to the airport, found Dawn's car, and installed a GPS system in the trunk and a voice recorder under the front seat. Back at the house, Frank and I each drank one of my ales while he brought me up to speed. Dawn's class schedule varies from 3 to 5 days. Classes in Dallas were scheduled for 3 days from Monday to Wednesday. Tom, Paul, and Bev flew out on Sunday afternoon and returned on Wednesday evening. Class materials are delivered to the class location 1 week before the scheduled class. Instructors do neither preparation nor dismantling. Each location has staff dedicated to preparation and dismantling. As I sat there trying to regain control of my anger, I thought about my father. "JT, you have to keep your anger under control. You can't think clearly when your anger is not under control." Bursting into the kitchen, I growled, "Damn it, this bitch hit me in the back. She will pay." "Did you find anything during the search?" "No. I brought us another beer, this time an India Pale Ale IPA, and told Frank that I didn't find anything unusual. The only red flag we could see was that Dawn needed to wash her clothes. After some discussion, we decided that Frank would intercept her bag at the airport, and I would look into how to turn off the washing machine so it wouldn't work right away. Before Frank left, he told me that his contact from Dallas was at Dawn's hotel, and he would talk to him in the morning and then call me. Frank left, and I drank more beer, wondering how to break the washing machine. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in the master bedroom. I slept in Kent's bed. Needless to say, I slept very little. To maintain my daily routine and take my mind off my thoughts, I went to the office. Frank called around noon, and we agreed to meet at my house that afternoon. Frank arrived at 2 o'clock with an armful of folders. He refused my offer to drink beer. This time, he was all business. A Dallas representative emailed his report with photos attached. Frank pulled out a photograph of 6 people sitting at a table in a restaurant. 3 women and 3 men were sitting in pairs. Frank asked, "Do you recognize any of these people?" I stared at the photo for a moment before saying, "The only person I recognize is Dawn." He then handed me a photograph of each person so I could get a better look at them. Again, I studied their faces in silence for several minutes. I handed Frank one of the photographs and said, "I think I've seen this man before, but I don't know where." Frank said, "While they were eating, there were video cameras on each floor of the hotel, aimed at the corridor of each floor. The next series of photos shows them leaving the restaurant, entering the elevator, and all 6 of them getting off on the 7th floor. The women entered room 707 and the men entered room 709. Photos taken at 10:15 a.m. Friday shows 3 women leaving room 707. At 10:29 a.m., Friday photos were taken of 3 men leaving room 709. The next series of photos shows them exiting the elevator, walking through the lobby, then exiting through the front door. From these photographs, I got the impression that this was a group of friends or business associates, not lovers. Frank told me that they went down the street to a restaurant for lunch. Everyone paid for their food and returned to the hotel. A series of photographs were taken showing them leaving their rooms, carrying their luggage to the elevator. Everyone went to the front desk and checked out. Frank turned to face me with a serious expression and asked, "Beer man, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you sure you want to know everything?" Without blinking an eye, I answered, "Hell yes." Frank paused, still looking into my eyes, then continued, "On a scale of 1 to 10, how candid should I be?" 11. Don't hold back a damn thing. Another folder was handed to me, and Frank began to outline what I had observed. Without going into details of the conversation, I learned that agents from Dallas entered rooms 707 and 709, and the cleaning crew was videotaping both rooms. It turned out that 707 and 709 are adjacent rooms with an internal door between them. They removed the sheets from the beds, sent them to a lab for DNA testing, collected used glasses for fingerprints, and went through the trash. A Dallas police officer said the rooms reeked of sex, and all 6 beds were stained. We won't know until the lab results come back whether Dawn participated or just watched, but there was definitely an orgy in the rooms. Bullshit. We both know she was in that room when she was fucked. Looks like the bitch I married is a lying liar, I said. I walked around the room cursing for about 5 minutes. I stopped, looked at Frank, and said, "Screw her. What do we do now? This bitch should be back tonight." First, let's turn off the washing machine. We moved it away from the wall and cut one of the wires going to the motor. I think Frank wanted to do this first to give me a simple task and give me time to pull myself together. We went back to the kitchen and Frank offered me something I never thought possible. He wanted to take a DNA sample from me and wanted to know if I could find clumps of hair from each of the children. I sat down and asked, "Why do you think that the children are not mine?" "I have no idea. You wanted to know everything, and this is just one item on our checklist." I thought for a minute and said, "We have strands of their hair before the first haircut. You only need 1 hair for each, right?" He said, "That will do." Frank put my sample in the bag as number 1, Kent's as number 2, Emily as number 3. We took a hair from Dawn's comb and numbered it 4. He'll send it to the lab in the morning. Frank had a contact at the airport who was going to try to intercept Dawn's luggage. She will be home late because of the time it takes to report her missing luggage. These issues were resolved, and we discussed my ability to act normally around Dawn. Will I be able to welcome her home with a hug and a kiss? Can I sit and listen to her talk about her trip? Can I invite her to dinner tomorrow and have sex with her? How long and how well could I lie to her? Frank explained that his staff needed time to obtain and analyze evidence. It may take several months to understand everything that is happening to Dawn. Will I be able to hold out for a few months? I told him, I will do whatever it takes. I want to know the truth. Frank reached into his pocket and handed me a packet of Viagra, just in case. Then he asked, "Could you leave the city on a business trip for 3 to 4 days?" I thought about who I could meet in a short time without alarming Dawn. A smile appeared on my face. I raised my head and said, "Yes, I can go to St. Louis and meet one of my oldest clients. We'll play golf, smoke cigars, and drink my beer. Damn, Fred really likes drinking my homebrew. I'll tell Dawn I'll leave Monday morning and return Thursday afternoon. Will this work? Why do you want me to leave?" Frank said, "Good question. I think if Dawn is up to something, she won't do anything to make you suspicious. She might let her guard down when you're out of town and slip up. I bet she had a great weekend and can't wait to spend time with them again. The only place we don't have a bug is in her office. Wait a minute. Is there something she always wears or carries with her? Maybe we can attach a little bug to it. Do you have ideas?" We stared into space for a while, thinking, and I said, "The only thing I can think about is her briefcase." Frank replied, "It's not the best, but it's better than nothing. I'll leave you a bug and you can attach it to your briefcase tonight. I have to go. Are you ready for the show?" I simply answered, "Yes." Before Frank stood up, he said, "If you get a chance this evening or morning, check Dawn's panties for leaks. I think these guys had sex without protection. You may want to get tested for sexually transmitted diseases and HIV. Good night, call me if you have a chance on the weekend. Remember to remain calm." I sat on the back porch with a porter and let my thoughts run wild. Other than Dawn's desire to wash her clothes first thing, on Saturday morning, I couldn't think of anything that would give me reason to doubt her. About 10 minutes before Dawn arrived, Frank called me and told me that they had collected her luggage and it was on its way to the laboratory. He again reminded me to remain calm. Dawn arrived, tired from her trip as usual, but this time she was upset that the airline had lost her luggage. She complained that she felt bad for the 2 pairs of trousers she bought last week. Everything else could be replaced, but she put what was important in her bag. She hugged me and said, "I love you, and I'm glad to be home. I missed you so much." After another hug and kiss, she went upstairs to take a bubble bath. I attached the bug to her briefcase and started watching TV. Returning my thoughts to Dawn's arrival, I could not detect anything in her behavior except her love for me, fatigue from the trip, a little hysteria about her luggage, and happiness to be home. I'm not sure if my feelings were on the same level as hers, but I tried. I realized that I needed to work on this, otherwise she would see right through me. I pushed these thoughts out of my head, went upstairs and got ready for bed, where we would sleep in each other's arms. I think Dawn slept late Saturday morning because she didn't have to worry about washing her clothes. Before heading to the shower, I checked Dawn's panties in the dirty clothes hamper. Speaking of perverts, I never thought I'd be looking at the crotch of her panties. I'm no expert on this, but I didn't see anything unusual about them. After taking a bath, I went downstairs, made coffee, went outside to get the newspaper, and waited for Dawn. She came into the kitchen while I was drinking my 3rd cup of coffee. She was in a robe and had a rested expression on her face. I smiled at her with my best smile, saying, "Good morning, sleepyhead. You look well rested and ready to start your day. Would you like to have a cup of coffee?" She smiled and said, "Yes, thank you. I'll be happy to drink a cup. I should lose my luggage more often if I'm going to get this kind of treatment." After breakfast together, I went outside to work on my to-do list. A couple hours later, Dawn came out saying she was going to the grocery store and asked if I needed anything. I told her no. I was going to clean up and move my batch of English brown ale from the primary to the secondary while she was gone. We ate dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, chatting about our week apart and discussing our schedule for the upcoming week. I told her about my trip to St. Louis, and she was glad to be home. She said, "I'm glad you're traveling instead of me. It's great to be home for a bit. Traveling just wears me out. If my luggage is not found by Wednesday, I will go to the store for a replacement after work on Wednesday. In fact, I hope they don't find it so I can buy everything except those pants I've been wearing for ages." I laughed, and then told her all about my latest batch of English brown ale. We went home, I took Viagra, we made welcome domestic love, but in reality, I just fucked this slut. I packed 2 cases of my homebrew and headed to St. Louis. Yes, I know it takes over 8 hours to get there, but what can I say? I love the drive. It gives me time to think alone. I usually think about my own business, but on this trip my thoughts were about Dawn. I called Frank from the road. I told him about my weekend. He didn't have any new information, but he'll be in touch. I was lost in thought, and not even 4 hours had passed before I called Frank again and asked, "Frank, I want to know everything honestly. What does your intuition say?" Frank sighed and said, "I discussed this with Joe in Dallas. We believe that Dawn was involved in an orgy, and this affair has been going on for many years. Why do you think so? It's unlikely that one person would sit and watch hours of sex without taking part in it. In addition, they are very comfortable with each other. They weren't in a hurry, they weren't nervous, they weren't hanging on each other, they weren't going into different rooms, and they weren't doing anything to attract attention. It takes years to become that comfortable with each other. My gut tells me that you won't like what we find out about this group, including your wife." Frank told me that, according to the interlocutor, these 6 people discussed classes, their families, and by all accounts, felt very comfortable with each other. They paid their own expenses, didn't sit next to the same person at every meal, and talked to everyone in the group. This group has been together for a long time. Outside the hotel rooms, they were friends. Inside the hotel rooms, they hung out. The last thing Frank told me was that I needed to decide what I wanted to do with Dawn and the other members of this group. Then I called Mike Davidson, my lawyer, and asked him to name the best divorce lawyer in the state. I gave him the brief information, and he said he would have Dave Ford call me. I checked into my hotel room and called Dawn to let her know I had arrived safely in St. Louis. I then called Fred to confirm our golf meeting. Around 9:30 p.m., Frank called to check on me. I told him I had given his name to my lawyer and Mike was going to call Dave Ford for me. Frank laughed and said, "The name Dave Ford alone will scare any lawyer Dawn contacts. I'm ready for this to end. Only this time I'll be the one to shit on them. I believe in fair play, but if you shit on me, I'll make you regret the day you met me. They want to play hard? Then I'm ready to show them how good I can play." We spent Tuesday afternoon with Fred on the golf course. We played 36 holes, smoked 2 cigars, drank a case of beer, and had dinner at the club. Frank called me around 1 p.m. on Wednesday and asked about my schedule. I said that I was free for the rest of the day and would go home on Thursday morning. Dave Ford called me around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I filled him in on the matter. He was glad to hear how I was doing. He said Frank's company was one of the best. Dave wanted to know what I wanted to do. If Dawn cheats on me, I want a divorce. I have to wait for Frank's group to finish their investigation before I can say how much I want to hurt Dawn and her group. Go ahead, start preparing divorce papers, accusing her of adultery. Our conversation continued about collecting evidence in her next class and whether I would be able to behave normally for a few months. Dave told me that in Georgia I could get a no-fault divorce faster and cheaper than charging her with adultery. Since the children are now adults, I have nothing to gain by accusing her of adultery. After discussing it with him some more, I decided that I needed to think more about how to handle the divorce. There was a knock on my door at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. Opening it, I saw Steve and Frank. How surprised I was to see them. I handed them beer from my refrigerator and asked why they had come. Frank said, "I have bad and terrible news for you, and I would like to tell you face to face. Steve doesn't know that I'm here to tell you. I thought you needed a friend. It's up to you whether you want Steve to stay and hear the bad news." I stood there with my mouth open and thought it could be so bad that they came to St. Louis to tell me about it. "Yes, I want Steve to stay." I sat up and looked at Frank. He said, "The bad news is that we have the test results, and Dawn was actively involved in the orgy." One bed showed evidence that all 6 were active on the same bed. Each of the girls had her own bed, and our evidence proves that each woman entertained all 3 men on their own beds. We identified Dawn from a hair DNA sample we obtained from your home. Beer man, I'm sorry things turned out this way. Stunned, I sat there, trying to comprehend what I had heard. I don't know how long I sat in silence with my eyes closed, my blood boiling, trying to regain control of my anger. Slowly, I opened my eyes and whispered, "What could be worse than my wife participating in an orgy with 5 other people?" Frank cleared his throat and said, "2 of these men are Kent and Emily's biological fathers. You are not the father of any of your children." Jumping up from my chair, I shouted, "What? Are my children not mine? This damn slut will pay, and I'll be one of the people collecting the money. This bitch had an affair for over 24 years and played me like a fool." They sat in silence and watched me walk around the room. My mind was racing at 1,000 miles an hour, trying to make sense of what I was being told. I saw my perfect world crumble around me. What should I do now? I would never have believed that Kent and Emily were not my children, much less believed that Dawn had been involved in an affair that lasted throughout our marriage. Frank was right. It was devastating news. One thing I know for sure is that they will pay dearly for this. I'll show them how good I am at playing hard football. Steve and Frank sat and watched as my emotions changed from shock, disbelief, confusion, sadness, loneliness, loss, anger, rage, and ultimately determination. I don't know how long I sat there. It felt like time stood still. Now I know why Frank came to St. Louis and took Steve with him. They were there to support me and also to make sure I didn't do anything stupid. After I began to control myself, we discussed my capabilities and goals. I told them, all these 6 assholes are going to pay big for this. We slept very little, and I was glad they were with me. Without them, I don't know how I would be able to drive the car. When we have evidence, we will decide how to deal with it in the most painful way. My divorce from Dawn would be very public and embarrassing for her. Yes, I know. It would be awkward for me, too. Soon, everyone will know that Emily and Kent had different fathers from my lying, cheating slut wife. In the state of Georgia, either party can file for a no-fault divorce. You submit an application, wait 30 days, get a divorce, and divide the property of the spouses. If you file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, it takes months to get a court date, and then you have to prove that adultery occurred. I really wanted to sue Dawn for adultery and drag them into the process. However, Steve, Frank, and Dave convinced me to go for a no-fault divorce. It would be faster and cheaper. I can still embarrass Dawn and her gang. It was only necessary to decide when, where, and how. Back in Atlanta, Steve, Frank, Dave, and I met in Frank's conference room to discuss what we knew, what we needed to find out, how to find out, and how to make them pay. "Hey, Frank, did Dawn do anything bad while I was in St. Louis?" "No, Dawn did not do anything or have any telephone conversations that were inappropriate." Frank continued, "We've been tracking the gang of 6 for the last 5 years. 2 of the gang always booked adjoining rooms, but it wasn't the same pair every time. More often than not, all 6 were there. But sometimes that changed. It happened that one of the women was there with 3 guys. There were always at least 4 people in one combination or another. This was not what I wanted to hear. I slammed my fist on the table and shouted, 'This lying, cheating slut will pay!' Frank, find out everything you can about the gang of 6, including Dawn. Obviously, I didn't know this slut. I want to know if they've been married, for how long, if they have children. In the case of women, if their spouses were the fathers of their children, if they all work for the same company, where they live, and anything else you can find out." Armed with Dawn's schedule, Frank found out when and where the next class would be held. This gave Frank time to make contacts and develop a plan to install cameras and bugs in their hotel rooms. Yes, I know this can't be used in court, but I was going for a no-fault divorce. I needed information. One thing I learned from Dawn's calendar was that she had 3 classes scheduled between now and our 25th wedding anniversary. Our 25th wedding anniversary will be on Sunday, and Dawn will finish her classes in Orlando the Friday before it. I looked at the group and said, "I want this shit to end on the last day of class before our anniversary. I won't celebrate our anniversary with her, and the slut won't like my gift. Gentlemen, that's when I'll stop being a cuckold to my lying, cheating slut wife, and she'll start paying for 24 years of being a lying, cheating slut. Here I turn my pain into their nightmare. Dawn will regret the day she met me. I owe her for lying to me every day for the last 24 years. A week later, we were in Dave's conference room where Frank brought us up to speed. George C. Thomas of Richmond, Virginia, Henry S. King of Little Rock, Arkansas, Charles K. Nixon of Columbia, South Carolina, Joyce D. Hopkins of Miami, Florida, Catherine G. Williams of Knoxville, Tennessee, and Dawn were part of the Gang of Six. They all worked for the same corporation and met in a new employee training program more than 24 years ago. On Wednesday after Dawn's last class, Frank, Steve, Dave, and I gathered around the conference table. Last week in D.C., Dawn and Henry had adjoining rooms, and all 6 of them were there. We found out that the 2 who had adjoining rooms slept together. The orgy took place only in adjacent rooms. It turned out that all the women were bisexual. On Saturday, they drew cards, and the next time the man and woman with the highest cards booked adjoining rooms. George and Joyce won and will be booking adjoining rooms in San Diego. The woman, Dawn this time, who received the adjacent number, received the first 4 with the men. She was fucked to the fullest in all known places. The women took turns servicing each other after the men. Every man fucked every woman, and every woman licked every woman. Men took Viagra and had sex with women for hours. They held competitions to see who could do what better for whom. With the exception of connecting rooms, all were scattered on different floors of the hotel. You never saw a woman enter or leave a man's room, and they never left adjacent rooms at the same time. During the week, they ate lunch with other people from the group. If you didn't look for anything, you would never know that these people were related to each other. They spent a lot of time with their classmates during the day and early evening. Around 10 p.m., they began to move into adjacent rooms. Sometime after 2 o'clock in the morning, they returned to their rooms. The only exceptions were Saturday and Thursday evenings, when all 6 stayed all night in adjacent rooms. All their conversations and interactions outside of the adjacent rooms were normal business conversations. They discussed where they stayed, where they ate, what games they went to, what plays they saw, what their children did, their vacations and their spouses. Probably after 24 years, it is easy to hide what is happening from the rest of the world. Once again, Frank's agents entered the rooms along with the cleaning crew. Because sex only took place in adjacent rooms, the collection and identification of hair samples and fingerprints for each individual was simplified. We took sheets from each room for analysis, as well as samples from soiled women's panties. Armed with DNA evidence, we were able to identify George as Emily's seed donor and Chuck as Kent's donor. Watching all the unprotected sex they had, it was clear that Dawn had no way of knowing who the father or fathers of her children were. George C. Thomas of Richmond, Virginia, has been married 24 years and has 2 grown children, all living in Richmond. George and his wife soon learned that George has another daughter. Henry S. King of Little Rock, Arkansas, has been married for 23 years and has 21-year-old twin sons. Charles K. Nixon of Columbia, South Carolina, married his high school sweetheart. They have been married for 25 years and have a son. Chuck soon learns that he is the father of another son. Joyce D. Hopkins of Miami, Florida, is married and will celebrate her 25th wedding anniversary next month. Joyce is the mother of a 23-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. Catherine G. Williams of Knoxville, Tennessee, has been married for 23 years and has 2 daughters and a son. All members of the Gang of Six families have been married for over 23 years and seem to be as happy as I was before I found out that my wife was a lying, cheating slut. We'd like to know if any of these 3 men are the father of any of Joyce's or Catherine's children. There is a possibility that they are the biological father of at least one of their children. Surely their spouses would like to know the answer to this question. Frank hopes to know by next Wednesday. How he's going to figure this out, I have no idea. There was a short meeting in Dave's office on Wednesday. Frank initially told us that the classes in Orlando would only be for 3 days. Can you believe it? This slut is planning on spending Thursday and Friday getting fucked before our anniversary. This bitch has no respect for me at all. Damn, this bitch will pay. After giving me time to calm down, Frank said, "Beer man, you are not the only spouse with children who has been deceived by another man. Henry is the biological father of daughter Joyce and son Catherine. George and Chuck are the biological fathers of Katharina's 2 daughters. Imogene Joyce is the only woman who has at least one of her children, the child of her husband. Henry is the biological father of daughter Joyce and son Catherine. George is the biological father of Emily and one of Catherine's daughters. Chuck is the biological father of Kent and one of Catherine's daughters. God, I need a flowchart. I guess because I know my marriage is over and I've gone through all the stages of grief, I can act like a loving husband. It became a game for me. Posing as a loving husband while plotting the destruction of Dawn, my lying, cheating slut, and soon-to-be ex-wife, was a lot of fun. I decided that if she could lie to my face for over 24 years, then surely I could pretend to be a loving, caring, dumb husband for a few months. Frank's team will carry out the same procedures in San Diego as they did in Washington. We would review the records and evidence collected to see if we had missed anything. We believed that everything would be the same as in Washington. To say I was looking forward to Orlando and their world turning into a nightmare would be an understatement. Catherine didn't make it to San Diego. Dawn and Joyce were happy to share 3 male instruments between the two of them. Since the class in Orlando was to be a 3-day event, all 6 planned to attend. 2 days of sex without peers around was very interesting for them. Dawn proved she didn't care about our anniversary by staying with her fuck buddies instead of rushing home to her lover. What they didn't know was that I would be their instructor on Wednesday afternoon. I will spend the last hour of class while all the students are still there to witness the public unmasking and destruction of the Gang of Six. Dave Ford and his staff had all the information needed to prepare the legal documents. He promised that everything needed would be ready on time. Frank sent his employees to the site and observed the gang members. Showtime was approaching. Dave, Frank, Steve, and I worked through the issue of how to deal with their exposure. The stage was set, now I was ready for my turn. On the Saturday after Dawn left, I called the spouses of the Gang of Six. I told them I wanted to surprise my wife in Orlando to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary and 25 years with the company. Since their spouses started working at the company at the same time as my wife, I thought it would be interesting for them to be there. I treated them to a plane ticket, which would be waiting for them at the gate. I told Kent and Emily about surprising their mom on Wednesday and invited them to meet me in Orlando on Tuesday. On Tuesday evening, I met with my children and told them everything. I spent several hours explaining how I found out, what evidence I had, how I planned to destroy their mother's world tomorrow, and how much I loved them. I told them, I am not your biological father, but you are my children, and I will always be your father. We cried and clung to each other. They asked many questions, and I answered them truthfully, without embellishing my answers. I asked them not to warn their mother, to which they both promised me they wouldn't. Looking into their eyes, I said, I want you both there tomorrow when I confront your mother. Scare and shame her to death. This is a big ask of you, and I'm sorry if I'm confusing you. The fact that you are not my biological children will be all over the newspapers in Atlanta by this weekend, so we will all be embarrassed. You'll see me acting like a bastard to your mother and her cronies. My goal is to scare them to death and make the rest of their lives hell. If you go, you will hear me say almost anything to confuse them. Nothing I say will change how I feel about you. You are both adults, so I cannot adopt you. I would adopt if I could, but know that from the bottom of my heart I love you and consider you my children. You are free to choose whether you will be there. After all, she is your mother. You don't have to decide right now. Give yourself time to think it over and make your own decision. Remember, I love you now and always. With tears in his eyes, Kent asked, Dad, I know that Mom loves you, and you love her. Can you forgive her and move on? Why can't you and your mom go to a consultation and figure this out? Emily asked. I looked at my children, trying to pull myself together. How to calmly answer incredible questions. I took a deep breath. I know as children, you always want your parents to stay together and be there for you. Please close your eyes and let me take you on a journey. You have met the perfect person and want to spend the rest of your life with him. You cannot bear to be separated from him any longer than necessary. After a fantastic honeymoon, you get a job, and a few years later, you have 2 wonderful children. You spend your time living for your family, attending football practices, soccer games, cheer camp, scouts, spending all their teenage years with them, romantic vacations and dinners with your spouse, hugging the people you love most in the world. Live to spend every minute with those you love, leaving the city at the last possible moment and returning to your loving family as quickly as possible. Every day you thank God for your family and the happiness it brings you. You are happy and feel blessed knowing that your life couldn't be better. I pause and let my words sink in. Smiles appeared on their faces. Kent, and now you are watching a film with your beloved wife. She is in a hotel room with 3 men and 2 women. Each woman takes a card from a deck of cards. A dazzling smile appears on your wife's face as she shows everyone the ace of spades. 3 men begin to take off their wife's clothes. She is naked and an orgy begins, during which 6 people do disgusting things, switching partners. So, Kent, will you believe that your wife loves you? Emily, now imagine your husband as one of the men in this movie. Are you in a forgiving mood? Are you looking forward to counseling and working on it? Kent sat with tears in his eyes, and Emily sobbed. I paused for a moment to allow them to process my words and get their emotions under control. At the end of the film, when the credits roll, you learn that this group has been making at least 4 of these films a year for the past 24 years. We can go to my laptop and access the streaming video of them in a hotel room a mile away right now, filming another movie. I've collected over 40 hours of footage of your mother and her gang from the last 3 trips. Kent, you find out that you are not the biological father of your children, or Emily, you find out that your husband is the biological father of someone else's child. How would you feel? I took a breath and continued. The person you love more than anything in the world leaves you and their kids a day early to meet a group of people so they can have an extra day of sex. Plus, they stay 2 more days for sex. When your spouse returns home, he needs 24 hours to recover before he can be with you, the one he claims to love. How much do you think they love, respect, and care for their spouses or children? Not only did your mother disrespect me and lie to me, she disrespected and lied to both of you. Kent, holding back tears, said, Dad, I never thought about it that way. You're right. I wouldn't want my wife to treat me like that either. I never thought about Mom choosing to spend more time with that group rather than stay home with us, much less how devastating that was for you. I love you. I don't know if I can be there for you tomorrow. I will let you know. Dad, I'm so sorry for your pain. I would cut off my husband's reproductive organs and shove them up his whore's ass if he did that to me and my children. You can count on me to be by your side tomorrow. Dad, thank you for being my father. I love you. Emily continued, Kent, get your head out of your ass. Mom chooses her friends, not us. Tomorrow you will be there with Dad and me. Stand up and be a man, weakling. Let's talk about what impressed me. Emily's reaction and outburst were a complete surprise to me. The look on Kent's face was priceless. God, how I love my children. Emily looked at me with fire in her eyes. What's the game plan for tomorrow? I invited the gang of 6 spouses to join us tomorrow. Their spouses think I'm throwing a party for our 25th wedding anniversary, and since their spouses have been with Dawn all these years, I thought it appropriate for them to join in the fun. You and Kent are the only ones I told in advance. For everyone else, this will be a complete surprise. I want them to give free rein to their emotions and react to their spouse's betrayal. I will give them a copy of all the evidence I have. Before I forget, you have several half-siblings that you might want to meet later. All 5 spouses came to the hotel, where we met, got acquainted, and had a good lunch. At 2 p.m., we, including Kent, went to the hotel where Dawn's class was being held. The rest of my unexpected guests were waiting for us in the hotel lobby. A lawyer from Dave Ford's office, a private investigator from Frank's staff, and a video camera operator were my other special guests. At 2:30, the florist bloomed the 25 red roses I ordered. Emily and the other women commented on how beautiful they looked. Emily had fire in her eyes and was ready for battle. I took a moment to calm her down and let her know that I was running the show. At 2:45, we moved through the lobby towards the meeting room. Emily was ready, Kent followed Emily's example, and the couple seemed to be overcome with excitement. With 25 roses, I entered Dawn's classroom at 3:00 p.m., followed by John with a video camera. Dawn blushed when she saw me approach her with roses and a smile on my face. I commented that her face matched the roses, and everyone laughed at my little joke. Dawn smiled, then turned to the class and introduced me to them as JT, her husband. I glanced around the crowd, determining where the other 5 were sitting. As expected, they were scattered around the class. Looking at Dawn, I said, "I know today is the last day of class, and before you leave, I wanted everyone to help make today a memorable one for you. This Sunday will be our 25th wedding anniversary." Before I could continue, a group led by Emily came out of the corridor. The photographer took a stunning shot of Dawn's face as they walked in, and the look on her face was priceless. But the look on the faces of the sex ring members was one of complete panic. Standing there with a smile from ear to ear, I watched as Emily introduced Dawn to her boyfriend's spouses. Emily enjoyed the unfolding drama. I've never seen this side of Emily before. Her future husband better watch out. This Sunday will be our 25th wedding anniversary, and I wanted you to help make it special. Next month, Dawn will celebrate 25 years with the company. Isn't it great that 2 important events happened within a month of each other? George, Henry, Chuck, Joyce, and Catherine joined us around the same time. I invited their spouses to join us for this special occasion. John is videotaping this special event, so please say a few words to the camera before you leave. In a few minutes, I will introduce you to the other participants. I took this time to pause, catch my breath, slow my heart rate, and look at the faces of the gang of 6. George, Henry, Chuck, Joyce, Catherine, please rise and join us. This group slowly walked to the front of the room while the rest of the class applauded. When Emily appeared next to me, I knew she was ready for fireworks. Taking Emily's hand, I led her to George. Then I said, "Emily, I would like to introduce you to George Thomas, your biological father." Dawn turned white as a ghost, and George's wife looked at me and asked me to repeat what I said. George is Emily's biological father. George found his voice and said, "Why do you think that I am her father?" Stretching out his hand, the lawyer placed 3 documents in my palm. Turning to George, I handed him the first document and said, "This is a request for a court-ordered paternity test." Handing him the second document, I said, "I'm suing you for 21 years of non-payment of child support and emotional trauma." Finally, George, this is a copy of the lawsuit I am filing against your employer for failing to comply with the morality clause in your employment contract. I already have DNA results from an independent laboratory confirming that you are the biological father of Dawn's daughter, Emily. The court-ordered test is just a formality. I turned to George's wife and said, "Don't worry. I have copies of all my evidence for you to use as you wish." I'm not sure if she heard me because she was chewing a new hole in George's ass. The class was in turmoil. The other spouses were shocked and now realized that they were not invited to a fun party. Well, at least I was enjoying myself. Kent surprised me by walking up to me. He stood up straight and simply nodded his head. At that moment, I was very proud of Kent. We walked over to Chuck's, where I introduced him the same way I introduced Emily to her biological father, saying, "Kent, I'd like to introduce you to your biological father, Charles." Kent, to Nixon. Silence reigned in the hall when they heard Chuck's middle name. In the silence that followed, the lawyer again placed the documents in my hands. I went over every document with Chuck the same way I did with George. Chuck's wife wanted to make sure I had copies for her. Everyone in the room seemed to calm down, since Dawn only had 2 children. I smiled, knowing that I wouldn't let the others get away without pain. They played, now they will pay. Dawn sat in a chair and sobbed. "Can I ask everyone to give me their attention?" I know this is not what you expected when I walked in. Hold on tight, the fun is just beginning. You could have heard a pin drop, it was so quiet. I continue. 5 months ago, I learned that Dawn, Joyce, Catherine, George, Chuck, and Henry were taking classes to have sex together. This has been going on for over 24 years. Emily turned 23 4 months ago. Do the math yourself. Now, I don't want others to feel left out, so I will share my information with other spouses. The gang of 6 began to scream as their consorts gnawed at their throats. While all this chaos was going on, a private detective from Frank's office started recording a video of one of their fucking sessions. The room fell silent as everyone watched the orgy. This caught everyone's attention. For those keeping track, Henry is the biological father of Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son. George is the biological father of Emily and eldest daughter Catherine. Chuck is the biological father of Kent and Catherine's youngest daughter. This means that Joyce's son is actually her husband's child. Can you believe it? Of the 7 children of these 3 women, only 1 is from her husband. The room was in complete chaos. I won't go into detail about the rest of the process. Let me just say that all the legal documents were delivered. Their spouses received copies, and the gang of 6 were seriously hurt. As I handed Dawn the divorce papers, I said, "Don't call, don't come home, or visit me. Eat shit, you lying, cheating slut." As I sat in my hotel room, sipping ASB extra strong bitter, I thought about how it all happened with Dawn and her gang. Emily broke my script when she stood next to me. My plan was to start with Dawn, go through each member of her sex group, and then inform everyone about the children. Emily wanted to jump right into confronting her biological father. My script went into the trash bin and I went with the flow. I achieved my goal of letting the gang of 6 know that I had exposed them to their spouses, publicly shamed them in front of their peers, served them with court papers, sued them, and left them with very angry spouses. I am feeling better. While I was getting another portion of ESB from the refrigerator, there was a knock on my door. Opening the door, I saw my children standing there. The last time I saw them, they were helping my mother into her room. They came in, hugged me tightly, and told me they loved me. Emily said, "Dad, I know you don't want to hear about Mom, but she's in serious condition. Tomorrow I'm taking her home. She needs to spend the rest of this week gathering her thoughts before returning to Atlanta. I am her daughter. I love her. She needs me, even though I want to kick her ass for what she did to our family." Emily still had the fire in her eyes. I knew Dawn needed to be with someone, and I'm glad Emily did the right thing for her mother. One thing I've learned about Emily over the last few days is that she is a strong woman, and she will be very firm with Dawn. Kent said, "Dad, I love you and I hate what Mom did to our family. Can I go home with you tomorrow?" "Of course," I answered. "Yes, I would like you to come with me." Emily stood up, hugged me, and said, "I'm going to go back and spend the night with Mom. I don't think she should be alone." The last thing she said as she walked out the door was, "Dad, I love you." Kent spent a few hours with me, drinking beer with me, before returning to his room. It's been 5 years since I destroyed the world that the gang of 6 lived in, and I'm glad to say that they've been good years for me. I feel great about what I did with this group of assholes. All 6 were fired the following week. They got divorced, went broke, were broken, and were left alone. It's strange that every time they get a decent job, their past boomerangs and forces them to look for another job. I'd like to take credit for this, but someone else is watching them. They are trying to rebuild their lives and relationships with their children. I can happily say that they have a long way to go. Their ex-spouses don't even talk to them unless they need money. Some of them have made some progress in their relationships with children. After returning to Atlanta and spending one night in this house, I realized that I would never sleep there again. There were too many memories for me to handle. I moved into a hotel while I was looking for somewhere else to live. Kent returned to Atlanta with me and stayed in the house until he moved to Dallas, Texas for his first real job. They seem to be happy with him and his work because he has been promoted 4 times already. He is single, dates often, enjoys his job, and enjoys living in Dallas. This summer, we will discuss his transition to my company. Even after 5 years, his relationship with his mother is cautious. Occasionally they talk on the phone. Kent hasn't seen his mother since we left Orlando. Kent talks to Emily on the phone almost every day. The devastation that the Gang of Six left behind when everything was revealed affected us all, especially the children. I don't know if Kent can trust anyone enough to marry. Emily took Dawn to Naples for a week. Every time Dawn tried to explain something, Emily told her to leave that explanation for her therapist because she didn't want to hear her lie. She told Dawn that there would never be an acceptable explanation for her actions and the destruction of our family. Emily will celebrate her first wedding anniversary next month. Dawn wasn't invited to their small beach wedding. Emily and her husband Trey live here in Atlanta. Emily didn't want to work or be associated with my company, but she came to my company 2 years ago. I like having her next to me. It turned out that she was a born businesswoman. Needless to say, Emily let Trey know early on what she would do to him if she ever caught him cheating. Yes, Trey knows all about Dawn and her Gang of Six. The spouses and children of the Gang of Six gathered here in Atlanta 8 months after I exposed them. It helped to be around people with the same feelings and try to move on with life. The children quickly became close and kept in touch with each other. In 3 weeks, we are going to Nashville for another meeting. It turns out that when the Gang of Six first started cheating, they paired up and spent a week together instead of having group sex. Emily was named after George's mother, and Kent after Chuck's brother. Dawn chose these names, forever linking her children to their biological fathers. As soon as this information became known, both Emily and Kent turned their backs on Dawn. Even after 5 years, they have little contact with her. Emily at least has lunch with Dawn, but Kent refuses to see her at all. I was deeply in love with Dawn until I found out she was a lying, cheating slut. I know some men can't move on with their lives, but I'm not one of them. Life goes on. You either lie down or pull yourself together and move on. My children needed me, and I needed them. Dawn and I came to an agreement. She left the house saying she had too many good memories to give it up, but I didn't. I also made an agreement with George and Chuck. The money I received from them I put into trust funds for Emily and Kent. I didn't want their money. I just wanted them to pay until they were hurt. 6 months after our divorce became final, I started dating. One day, I hope to find someone with whom I can share my love and life. Loving someone and being loved is the secret to a long, happy life. Until then, I will continue to look and wait for Emily to give me grandchildren that I can spoil. Nothing good happens to anyone when someone cheats. Payback is a bitch. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.